Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on Power BI to look at the real engine under the hood. It's the language that drives the most powerful insights, and it's called DAX.
Think about it for a second. Every single table, every row, all that data you have, it's got stories to tell. But just staring at the raw data, that's not going to cut it. The real gems, the actual secrets, they're hidden between the lines. So the big question is, how do you get your data to talk? You need a way to ask it really sophisticated questions. Things like, what was our growth this year compared to last year? Or which of our products is actually the most profitable? To get those answers, you have to build calculations that can mash up, compare, and analyze your data in ways a simple table just can't.
And that, right there, is exactly what DAX was built for. DAX, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions, is the formula language for Power BI. It's what lets you stop just looking at your data and start really interrogating it. And to do that, we first need to understand what a formula is even made of.
So, what does a DAX formula actually look like? It might seem a little intimidating at first glance. I get it. But honestly, it's just a combination of a few core building blocks. It's kind of like following a recipe. What's pretty amazing is that every single DAX formula, I don't care how complex it gets, is built from just these four simple things. You've got functions, like sum or average. Think of those as your action verbs. Then you have operators. That's your basic math, your plus, minus, and equal signs. You can use variables to hold on to results partway through, which is awesome for keeping your code clean and fast. And finally, you have references, which is just the fancy term for how you point to a specific table or column. That's the whole shebang. Every powerful DAX formula is just a creative mix of these four parts.
All right, so if those are the building blocks, then the real secret weapon in your DAX arsenal is something called a measure. This is where the magic really starts to happen.
Now, Power BI gives you two kinds of measures. On one side, you've got your implicit measures. This is what happens when you just drag a number field onto a chart and Power BI just, automatically sums it up. It's fast, it's easy, but it can be sloppy, and sometimes it's just plain wrong. On the other side, you have explicit measures. These are the formulas you write yourself using DAX. They take a little more work up front, sure, but they give you total control, total flexibility, and pinpoint accuracy. This is the pro's choice, and it's the foundation of any report that you can actually trust.
This brings us to what is maybe one of the most fundamental decisions you have to make in Power BI. Seriously, understanding this is what separates the beginners from the experts.
So, picture this. You need a new number. What do? Do you create a calculated column, which physically adds a new column to your table? Or do you create a measure, which is more like a virtual, on-the-fly calculation? They might sound kind of similar, but they act in completely different ways.
The key difference really boils down to when and how they get calculated. A calculated column is static. It gets computed once when you refresh your data, and it actually stores a value in every single row. This makes your file bigger and is really best for things you want to use in a filter or a slicer. A measure, on the other hand, is dynamic. It's virtual. It only gets calculated when you actually interact with the report, and it doesn't store any data itself. This makes it absolutely perfect for summary values in your charts and tables.
So what's the verdict? Well, here's the rule of thumb. When in doubt, always go with a measure. Because they're so lightweight and only calculate when they have to, they lead to reports that are faster, more efficient, and way easier to scale. Just think of them as the top-tier choice for pretty much any summary calculation you need to do.
Okay, now that we've got the fundamentals down, let's get into the fun stuff, the pros playbook. These are the best practices that are going to make your DAX code not just work, but work beautifully and efficiently.
Just take a look at this. On the left, we've got a formula trying to check if a specific value is selected. It's defensive, it's clunky, and it's using three different functions to do one job. Now look at the right, the modern, elegant solution, the selected value function. It does the exact same thing with one clean, super readable function. This is a perfect illustration of a core DAX principle. Simplicity almost always equals better performance.
Next up, division. Seems simple, but we all know that dividing by zero can crash your whole calculation. The old way was to wrap it in a complicated if statement to check the denominator first. The better way is to use the dedicated divide function. It's literally designed to handle division by zero gracefully. It just automatically returns a blank. No errors, no fuss. The rule is dead simple. If there's even a tiny chance your denominator could be zero, you have to use the divide function.
And that brings us to a really common trap, this temptation to convert those blank results into zeros. You might think a zero looks cleaner than just an empty space in your table, but trust me, this is a deeply inefficient way to design things.
You see, when a measure returns a blank, Power BI is smart enough to know there's no data for that particular spot, and it just doesn't display it. This is incredibly efficient. But when you force it to show a zero, you're telling Power BI to process and render a row for every single possible combination, even the ones with no data. This just makes your query slow and your reports cluttered. So the big takeaway here is this: learn to embrace the blank. It's the secret to fast, clean reports.
Here's another quick win for you. If you need to count the rows in a table, you might think, oh, I'll just use the count function on a column. And that works right up until that column has blank values. A much safer, more robust, and frankly more descriptive way is to just use count rows. It does exactly what it says it does, and it's not going to get tripped up by blanks. It's just the better, more professional way to go.
Now, for the really complex stuff, pros use a technique called measure branching. Instead of writing one gigantic, monster formula that's impossible to read, you break the logic down into steps. You start with a simple core measure, like total sales. Then you build a second measure that refers to that first one, like sales last year. Then you build a third one that refers to the first two to get year-over-year growth. It turns your code modular, it's easy to read, and it makes debugging 1,000 times easier.
So after all these tips and techniques, what's the core philosophy here? What's the zen of writing great DAX?
It really just boils down to this: structure and clarity are everything. Write code that a human being can actually understand. Hide all the messy helper columns and focus on elegance. Simpler is almost always better. And above all else, prefer explicit measures for their control, their speed, and their readability. Good DAX isn't about being complex, it's about getting powerful results with beautiful simplicity.
So the next time you interact with a really slick, responsive Power BI report, just take a moment. Don't just look at the pretty charts. Think about the elegant, efficient DAX that is probably humming away just beneath the surface, turning all that raw data into real, actionable insight. Thanks for joining this explainer.